All right, welcome. Today we're going to try and unlock a mystery that's been hiding in plain sight. Our guide for this journey is a book called Astrotheology and Shamanism. And let me tell you, it puts forward a pretty radical idea about where our most sacred stories actually come from. It suggests that their true origins are not at all what we've been taught. So let's see what kind of secrets it's ready to spill. So the book kicks things off with a pretty wild question. Think about it. Santa Claus, red and white suit, flying reindeer. What if that's not just some cute story for kids? What if it's actually a coded message pointing to something way, way older? That's the central puzzle we're going to try and piece together today. Okay, so the core idea of this whole thing is that our most cherished religious symbols, well, they aren't what they seem. The book basically argues they're like containers, hiding this ancient knowledge that has either been lost to time or maybe, just maybe, was deliberately hidden. So, how do we crack this code? Well, the book gives us two keys, two fundamental ideas to unlock it all. The first one is as above, that means looking up to the patterns of the stars. And the second is so below, which is all about looking down at the plants and substances found right here on Earth. Let's see how these two keys fit into the lock. All right, first up, let's tackle that cosmic story, as above. The whole idea here is simple. If you want to understand the gods, you've got to start by understanding the heavens. And this brings us to a concept called astrotheology. Now, what does that mean? The theory is that the heroes of ancient religions, the gods, the saviors, they weren't actual historical people walking around. Instead, they were personifications of the sun, the moon, the stars. Their epic stories, they were really just clever allegories for the cycles of the cosmos, the stuff that happened in the sky year after year. So let's look at the most important cosmic story of them all, the sun's annual journey. Put yourself in the shoes of our ancestors. As winter comes, the sun starts heading south. The days get shorter and shorter. It must have felt like the world's life source was literally dying. Then, for 3 days around the winter solstice, it hits its lowest point in the sky and just stops. It looks like it's standing still. But then, on December 25th, it starts its journey north again. It's coming back. The sun is, for all intents and purposes, reborn. And here's where the theory really clicks into place. This whole cosmic story of the sun, well, it starts to sound an awful lot like the stories of many savior figures, right? Think about it. Born on December 25th, called the light of the world, traveling with 12 followers, which the book links to the 12 constellations of the zodiac, and the big one, a death followed by a resurrection after 3 days. See? That's the as-above key at work. Okay, so we've looked up to the heavens. Now it's time to use our second key and look down at the earth. This is the so below part of the puzzle. And this is where the argument gets really wild. The book claims that the original Holy Sacrament, the thing that gave people a direct experience of God, wasn't what you think, like bread and wine. No, it was something very specific, a psychoactive mushroom called the Amanita muscaria. Now, you've almost certainly seen this mushroom before, even if you didn't know its name. It's that iconic fairy tale mushroom, bright red cap, little white spots. And here's a key detail. It only grows under certain trees, like pine and birch trees. And for centuries, this is exactly what Siberian shamans used to enter, visionary states. So according to the book, this mushroom wasn't just a sacrament, it was the sacrament. The argument is that this fungus is the real, physical thing behind some of religion's biggest mysteries. The flesh of God you could eat to find enlightenment? That was the mushroom. The manna from heaven? The mushroom. Even the Holy Grail, the theory says it wasn't a cup, it was this sacred fungus. All right, so now we have our two keys, right? As above, the story of the sun in the sky, and so below, the story of the sacred mushroom on Earth. Now, let's put them together and see how the book uses them to decode symbols you know very well. Okay, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Santa Claus. Let's compare him to what we know about Siberian shamans. Santa wears red and white, just like the mushroom. He lives in the far north, where these shamanic traditions come from. The whole coming down the chimney thing? Well, when the snow was too deep, these shamans would enter their yurts through the smoke hole at the top. And the flying reindeer? Turns out, reindeer in that region absolutely love to eat these mushrooms. So the theory goes, Santa Claus is basically a half-remembered story of the mushroom shaman. And what about the Christmas tree? Why do we bring a pine or a fir tree into our homes? Well, what kind of tree does the sacred mushroom grow under? a pine or a birch. The gift we put under the tree is a stand-in for the original sacred gift, the red and white mushroom that grew right there. This connects to the ancient idea of a world tree, this cosmic axis connecting the heavens above with the earth below. It's as above and so below, all wrapped up in one single powerful symbol. All right, so this all leads to a really big question, right? If there's any truth to what the book is saying, why isn't this common knowledge? Why is this the first time most of us are hearing about it? I mean, why would this history be hidden? Well, the book's answer is pretty direct. It points to something it calls the Pharmacratic Inquisition. That's a fancy term, but it describes a long, systematic campaign to stamp out the old religions, specifically the ones that were based on using entheogenic plants. That just means psychoactive plants that were used to have a direct, first-hand spiritual experience. So the theory suggests there was this deliberate shift. The old way was all about having a direct, personal, and maybe even a little wild and uncontrollable experience of the divine, using sacraments like the mushroom. The new way that replaced it was a system based on faith, where a priest or an institution stands between you and the divine. You didn't get to experience it for yourself anymore. You were simply told what to believe. There's a famous quote from Carl Jung that the book uses, and it just perfectly sums up this whole idea. He said, "Religion is a defense against a religious experience." It's this idea that sometimes the structures we build around spirituality can actually shield us from the very thing they're supposed to be about. In the end, this book isn't really asking you to believe every single detail. It's asking you to question. It leaves us with this one big thought to chew on. How does everything change? How does our understanding of our world and even ourselves change when we dare to look past the surface of our most sacred stories and just consider the possibility of a hidden history, one written in the stars above and growing right here from the earth below?